There's a lot of talk lately about actors of a certain race playing characters of another race. And it's a legitimate discussion to be having because there's plenty of characters who throughout the history of cinema have been whitewashed. Characters who I think of like Avatar, for instance, The Last Airbender, when they made that into a movie. Or, putting an actor who's, I think Native Americans get it a lot, where you take a white actor and put them in as a Native American. Um, but there's one movie where this is so blatant and egregious, and yet it somehow never gets brought up. And I think it's interesting to have this conversation about it. The movie I'm talking about is Scarface. Now, here I have my Legendary Gangsters collection, which has American Gangsters, Carlito's Way, Casino, Public Enemy, and of course Scarface. This is a DVD set, but I already had Scarface, so I popped in my Blu-ray of it. Al Pacino plays Tony Montana. He is a Cuban refugee who comes here and climbs the ladder to become the drug kingpin. This is a classic 80s movie about excess and greed and how you will destroy yourself with your vices. It's a great movie. And Al Pacino gives one of the sort of towering performances in cinema. I mean, it's not subtle, but it's so big and over the top that it is a lot like the gangster movies of the 30s and 40s, Jimmy Cagney, Top of the World Ma. It's that level of sort of hyperrealism. And Pacino's phenomenal in the part, but he's not Cuban. Almost none of the actors in the movie are Cuban. These are all white guys with a tan doing accents. And really, like F. Murray Abraham and Robert Loggia. Robert Loggia, who doesn't look anything like he's Cuban, and the accent sort of wavers. He's actually kind of, in my opinion, a weak link in the movie because he's just not consistent with his character. I'll say it right now. My rating up front, Scarface is a 4.5 out of 5. It is a terrific movie. It has influenced the culture, and deservedly so. We will, for the rest of time, as long as they make movies, there will be parodies of the "Say Hello to My Little Friend" bit. That out of the way. My question is this. We're all in agreement now. Well, not all of us. There's plenty of people. You can't make The Little Mermaid black. We're, for the most part, in agreement that white actors should not play characters of another race. But think about Scarface with a different actor playing the Pacino role. Is it as iconic? Is it a movie that we'd still be talking about 40 years later? I don't think it would be. Pacino is arguably the greatest actor of his generation, arguably the greatest actor of all time, if not at least in the top 5 or 10. He gives a towering, powerful, epic performance that nobody else could give. So, would it be better to go back and take him out and put in an actor of Cuban descent, whoever that might be. Now, that actor might have been great in the role, but I guarantee you he wouldn't have been Pacino. First of all, I don't believe in putting the standards of today on any movie from the past. Here's my criteria. If it was wrong then and they knew it, they were aware that it was wrong, then I have a problem with it. If it's one of those things where it's like times have changed, they didn't think they were doing anything wrong, they didn't think they were being harmful in any way, it was just the way things are at that time in history, I don't have a problem with it. I see it, I'll see the problem, and I will plow past it. And I can do that with Scarface. I don't think anybody else should have played that part. I don't. I don't think going back in time and putting somebody else in the Pacino role is again, there's no way we're talking about it 40 years later. No possibility we're talking about it 40 years later. You say, well, you don't know that, James. Maybe the actor would have been phenomenal. He might have been phenomenal, but he wouldn't have been Pacino. And I don't think they were doing caricatures either. They were, Pacino's not that kind of guy. Pacino would research his part. He would, he's do the best he could for the accent to be correct, for everything that he's doing to be spot on. But he's not Cuban. It's a question that I think that we ought to be having these discussions instead of just shutting them down instantly. Instead of just saying, and again, nobody's saying this about Scarface. Scarface has really flown under the radar as far as this topic goes. But I think it's a discussion worth having. When does this kind of thing work? And if it does occasionally work, what does that say about our pushing for it never to happen? Now, nowadays, it gets a little bit, when you're saying Alec Baldwin can't play a blind man because he's not blind, or Bryan Cranston can't play a paraplegic because he's not a paraplegic, you're getting silly. You're getting stupid at that point. When you say Scarlett Johansson can't play a trans person, there's an argument to be made. But because in the movie that Scarlett Johansson was supposed to star in, there was such an outrage and they took her out of the movie, that movie's not going to get made. It's not going to get made because there's no trans actor of her stature to star in it. And so because there is no trans actor of that stature, the movie's not going to get made. People who might either have changed their opinion about the trans community or had their opinions formed by that movie aren't going to get to see it. I always bring up the fact that when I was 13, I didn't really know what gay meant. It was a thing that we called each other on the playground. But I didn't know what it actually meant. And then because I have this weird thing where I like to see comedic actors play dramatic parts, and I've always had this thing, I went to go see the movie Philadelphia with Tom Hanks. And I came out of that movie and I said, oh, that's what gay is. Okay. And I learned something and I was fine with it. It shaped my opinion. Tom Hanks is not gay. And there's a lot of people who look at Philadelphia and go, oh, they did it in a way, it's not right, they did. But for 13-year-old James, that shaped how I saw that community. And I think the Scarlett Johansson movie would have done the same thing. Scarface is a classic. It is one of those movies that you have to see, especially if you're interested in the gangster genre. And it wouldn't be a classic if Al Pacino wasn't in it. But what does that say? I'm not saying what it says. I'm not saying that it's right that Al Pacino was in this movie doing an impression of a Cuban and taking away a part that could have gone to a Cuban actor. But with Al Pacino in it, that movie might not have ever gotten made. And if it did get made, I guarantee you it wouldn't be as good. Again, I'm not offering answers here. I'm posing a question. I think that these discussions are important instead of just saying, it's never right, it's never okay. Sometimes it works. And sometimes it informs and educates people. Again, I'm not offering an answer, just asking a question. Scarface, 4.5 out of 5. I'm taking half a star off because it's a little long. It's a little bloated in certain parts. Doesn't need to be almost 3 hours long. But this is a movie that is an experience. There is a reason it has survived, a reason it has endured. Go check it out. You will not regret it. Their worlds.
Sort of gave myself the challenge of, okay,